Thank you all for coming to the Kansas City DevOps Meetup. We've got Ingus Vilnis all the way here from Latvia to tell us about Zabbix and kind of an overview of the system. And we want to ask questions as we go along, get to know Zabbix and Ingus better. Hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all for being here tonight. It's really been a pleasure for me to be invited here and have a talk and tell you about Zabbix. Before we start, may I ask, does anybody here knows what Zabbix actually is? Oh, some people do. That's nice. Well, I'm gonna tell today what you can do with Zabbix. Probably you'll be able to discover some features what you still don't know, and in case you have any questions in the middle of the presentation, so just feel free to ask. So let's get started. Now, why would we like to monitor our environment? So the problems are the following. The cost of the downtime is pretty high. Imagine you run some business and your IT systems go down and you do not notice it. So you lose some money because of that. Also, it's very hard to manage a large environment having thousands of servers. It's not transparent, so you need some software to also take care of that. Also, when your environment is growing, you probably may not notice that some systems get overloaded, and to do so, you can use some monitoring solutions that actually follows the situation on your systems, and then based on that, you can see whether you need to buy some new hardware or do some upgrades. So to solve all these problems, you can use Zabbix monitoring solution. So, what is Zabbix and where does it come from? So, Zabbix comes from, as already told, a small country, Latvia. So, Zabbix as a software itself has been around for more than a decade already, with various versions and features added through the years, and we'll also talk about them later on. Very important thing to know that Zabbix is an open source solution. So you can go to our website, download Zabbix, and use at your company at no matter what scale, with all the features included. It's all open source and free to use. And so, what you get with that? So basically you get an all-in-one solution for your monitoring. You can monitor virtually anything on your environment. We'll also talk about that. What can be monitored? You can monitor devices virtually all over the world, actually, with one instance. So Zabbix really is capable of monitoring a large enterprise networks. We do have examples with having even up to 100,000 of devices being monitored with Zabbix, and that is pretty awesome. And you can monitor both your data center and office, and you can monitor your remote branches, no matter are they located in America, in Europe, in Australia. So that all can be done. So the main functions, what you can actually do with that. So here you see a nice overview of the things that can be monitored. And if we start at the very bottom, there are many hardware parameters that can be monitored with Zabbix. You can see CPU usages, loads, RAM statuses, RAM usages, disk statuses, fans and temperature sensors. You can connect also sensor data to Zabbix and monitor like fan speeds, humidity, lights, whatever comes in mind. Then there is an operating system layer, which enables you to monitor operating system data like some kernel statistics, user statistics, uptimes, and so on. There we use Zabbix agents, which can be installed on the monitored machines, and agents for majority of the operating systems are available out of the box. Then there is a network layer. So you can monitor your network equipment, routers, switches, disk arrays, usually using SNMP. You can monitor virtual machines. We do have a built-in support for VMware. So if you're running VMware instances, all you got to do is you enter your ID of your virtual hypervisors, and then Zabbix discovers all the virtual hosts and monitors statuses using VMware's built-in API. You can also read log files in Zabbix. Any text-based log file can be parsed. They can be Linux logs, Windows event logs. You can then search for particular event IDs you may be interested in. Then there's a middleware layer. You can monitor statistics from your applications like MySQL databases, Oracles, Apaches, PHPs. We also support Java applications using the JMX interface, and then Zabbix can be heavily customized, and with help of some scripts, you can monitor any other applications of your choice. So basically, you can monitor virtually anything that has an IP or DNS name, or applications, or any smart equipment and sensors. So how this happens? So there are various sources of information that Zabbix uses for getting data, and one of them is Zabbix Agent, which is a small piece of software that can be installed on the operating system. It can be run as a Linux process. For Windows machines, it's Windows service, and you just tell Zabbix Agent the IP or DNS name of Zabbix server, and so Zabbix server sees the agent and can then pull the data from that machine. You can also use simple checks such as ping. You can use SNMP checks. All three versions are supported, including authentication, so you can enter the MIBs or OIDs you're interested in, and Zabbix then gets the data. As I told you, can monitor log files. You can use SSH sessions and get data into Zabbix in that way. And you can also execute scripts with Zabbix. So you want Zabbix to execute a command on a remote system? Yes, you can do it with scripting. You can also use scripts to gather data back into Zabbix. That's also possible, and many users use that as well. And then from the data already collected, you can use calculated checks and do some calculations, or use aggregated checks which displays the average data or minimums and maximums for a particular host group. When the data is gathered, there's you can store it in a database. So Zabbix user relation databases, the most popular of them are MySQL and Postgres. but we also do support Oracle and DB2. You can store virtually unlimited amount of historical data. The only physical limitation is the size of your hard disks on your database. But then I will tell about that later, how Zabbix can reduce the usage of disk space using some built-in housekeeping mechanisms. So, we have now the data gathered and the data stored, but we want to know when there are problems in the systems. And therefore Zabbix uses a concept called triggers. So trigger is basically a logical expression that can describe a complex problem condition. You can classify your triggers into 6 different severity levels. And as you can see in this example here, if on a Linux system the CPU load on average for the last 3 minutes, 180 seconds, is higher than 2, then you get notified. And Zabbix can notify you in multiple ways. It can be a visual representation on Zabbix Web Front End. It can be an audio alarm, and Zabbix can also send you an email or SMS message. You can create various complexities of triggers using different mathematical operators and mathematical functions.
The audio alarm, is that just on the server, or do you just have a UI of it?
So as for the audio alarm, you can configure Zabbix Front End in the user section that it actually plays an audio alarm when there is a problem state. When a trigger goes into problem state, you get an audio. It can be configured, and just the browser plays an audio file. I'll show you how to configure that. Yes, so well, with the triggers, so you can combine multiple hosts as well. So you can get notified not only about the situation when one host has a problem, but if a host group is in a problem state. Another great feature, Zabbix are trigger dependencies. You see in this example here, there is a problem. A disk on a Linux system is full. There is no free space. So what happens? There is no free space. The Linux has stopped. The database does not respond, and the CRM system is down. And normally you would get 4 alarms about all the situation. But if you configure trigger dependencies, then you get only 1 alarm about this problem. And when you fix the root cause of the issue, then all those other issues are solved. Another example, you have some systems behind a router. And if a router goes down, so the other systems behind that are not accessible. So you can configure that all the systems depend on that router. And when the router is in a problem state, then you get only 1 notification, not 100 notifications about that problem state. So it's more difficult to filter out that. So that can be solved with trigger dependencies.
Is there auto discovery?
Yes, there is auto discovery. We'll talk in more detail about that later. But Zabbix can discover your network devices, and Zabbix can discover disk drives and network interfaces and CPUs on the system, and then monitor the data of those items.
So I'm asking more of between like the server relationships.
Or trigger dependencies.
Yeah.
And then in this context, the network topology probably, right? So no, that's not available in Zabbix. So you have to configure those dependencies manually. So Zabbix does not know which components depend from from each other. So that has to be done manually.
Another quick question. For services that are dependent on one another, do they still all show up as being in an unhealthy state on the web UI and just don't send a notification, or will they also look healthy?
No, they appear on the front end. Just you get the main notification. You can also configure it like that. You simply you do not get the notifications about the dependent triggers, but you get only for the. Okay, so now Zabbix has built also a possibility to set up so-called trigger hysteresis, which basically reduces a common problem known as trigger flapping and false alarms. So you can configure your Zabbix that the trigger goes into problem state when it receives one value and then releases and goes to OK state only if another value is received. So here, this is example on the server room temperature, and Zabbix goes into problem state when it receives value higher than 20 degrees Celsius, and then the temperature flaps around this value, but so it's not really safe to release the problem into OK state. So we can consider it safe when we receive a value lower than 15, and so that's what you also can do. So another value lower than 15 comes in, and then only then you can say that it's okay for the system.
So can that be set up where like it alarms gets to one state, but then for okay has to get to another good state, but be there for a certain period of time to verify it's not flapping past that?
Yes. You can also use such a thing called relative triggers. And what it does, it compares the values received now, let's say for the last hour, the CPU load on average, with the values received for the same hour a day ago. And if those values on average differ more than 2 times, then it's a problem. So it's an indicator that the behavior of the CPU is out of the normal state. So you can also get notifications on such situations. So many different things can be created with Zabbix triggers. Now, about another concept called templates. So basically, a template is a set of elements that can be applied to your monitored devices. And many devices do have many parameters in common. Let's say we are using an operating system on our servers, that is in Linux, and all Linux servers basically have the same metrics you want to monitor, like the CPUs, the memories, the uptimes, and so on. And the same for the triggers. You want to get notified about the same things. And what you do, you can combine all these items and triggers into a template and then simply apply to all your Linux hosts at once. So you do not tell separately for each of the newly added servers to add like 20 different metrics. So you can do it all at once. You can combine templates and use multiple ones on systems with different purposes. So all servers can share a Linux template because they're running on a Linux operating system. But then, depending on the servers running there, you can apply either a mail server template if it's a mail server, or database template, or Java template, depending on the usage. And you can combine multiple templates. You can use a wide range of built-in templates already available on Zabbix out of the box, but you can create your own templates with your customized parameters. You can also use a wide range of community templates available on the internet or our website. So many options there as well. Now we see how to gather data and how to know when there are problems. But when there are problems, we want to get notified. And Zabbix has many alerting capabilities. So, as we know, it can show it on a dashboard, or it can play an audio alarm. But it can also send messages and emails and execute remote commands. So let's say in this example, a problem has occurred. So an email message to a network administrator has been sent immediately. If the problem still exists after 10 minutes, then he gets an SMS message. If nothing happens, so after 15 minutes, a ticket is created on your help desk system. And then it can escalate to your managers and or other teams. So all those steps can be configured to fit your needs. You can, in different conditions, notify different teams. So if it's a problem on a database server, so only the database team gets a notification. You can customize all those times when there is the alerting going on. And yes, you can also ask Zabbix server to actually perform some actions on those systems, like execute a command, like a service restart, or even reboot the server itself if required. You can also use ticketing systems or messaging systems. They can also be connected to Zabbix. So if you use an enterprise messaging system, that's also compatible with Zabbix. So this is how a typical Zabbix Web Front End looks like. And let's have a closer look on an actual, it's a demo system, but this is how actually Zabbix Web Front End looks like. So this is a typical dashboard, and here you see the main statistics of your Zabbix server, whether it's running or not, how many hosts is it monitoring. Okay, this is a demo instance, so not that many, but as we know, the host count can be up to thousands. Then there's the user count and the required server performance, which is a calculated number of new values per second that Zabbix server actually should be getting. Then you see various views of the host groups you are having and the problems that are on those hosts. So here you have Windows machines, and there is one issue having high trigger severity. And you can click on that and see on which host is the problem, what's the issue, and how long has it been going on. You can acknowledge the triggers, so you can click here and actually post a message on Zabbix Front End for your team that you're already working on this problem, and acknowledge the issue. Someone else can also add an acknowledgement as well, so tell them, okay, you're working on it, but work faster, right? So here you can see all your problems in various views or various hosts and various host groups. This can be customized, so various users can access only separate host groups. So you can restrict your users from viewing all your systems. So when it comes to very large environments, there may be plenty of host groups, so you may want to filter out that as well. So you can do that in Zabbix. You may actually want to see the data that's received now for for your host, and that can be done in the latest data section. So you can see all the metrics that are actually monitored on your system, and see when the data is gathered, what's the value. You can see a nice graph of the values actually followed, and view the graph for different time periods, like a week or a month. Notice there are white backgrounds here and gray backgrounds. So the white ones are the working hours, let's say from 9 till 5, and then the gray is weekends, nights, and non-working time, basically. Yeah, did you notice the little shifts here?
Yeah, you usually work different hours.
Yeah. So you can also view the collected raw values. If there would be a log file, you could see the log file entries here as well. If we move back, you can actually, so you can combine also multiple parameters. You can select multiple and click here on the display stacked graph or a normal graph of your values as well. So
That feature 2.4 or 2.2?
that's a feature of 2.4. So in 2.2 you can only, from latest data view, you can only see one value. But that, yes, you can take whichever graph you want to get the same. Let's take the same. And here is one graph. And you can view it full screen, or you can add it to your favorites, just with a click of a button, and your graph actually displays here in the favorite graphs section very easily. Speaking,
That one's like a per user setting of favorite graphs. Or
yes,
Awesome.
you can create your own.
Can you create like a shared view? So I want this group of people to be able to see this. So
Yes,
everyone,
you can create also screens and customized graphs that can be viewed by all users. And then probably if we're talking about the graphs, I will show about also visualization capabilities. We'll return to the front end later on as well and do some configurations. But here's for the graphs. You can create multiple customized graphs, very colorful, using multiple items for multiple hosts. You can draw a map of your network environment. So this is a very basic map, which is created with the components available out of the box. But here you see if those systems are okay and no triggers in the problem states, so the lines are green, and you see OKs here. But if the system has some problems, you see that also live on the map. Multiple layer maps can be created. So if there's a cloud, you can actually create a sub-layer of this map and then double-click and drill down and see it in more details.
Does that like walk your network in Discover?
Now, Zabbix has not the network discovery feature, so that these maps can be created only manually.
Oh, okay. That's actually better in the case. Like if you have a big network and you're only responsible for a portion of it.
Yes, you can create those maps in multiple logical levels, multiple layers, displaying different data. So various complexities can be used for those maps. You can also use customized images for the elements of the maps. Here you have some disk array, and you can place an icon on actually which disk there is a problem. You can use a picture of a geographical map if you want your network environment to be displayed on the map, on a physical geographical map. That's also possible. You can create screens, which is a combination of graphs, of maps, of raw data, and the screens can be created for all users to see and use. And those screens, you can create a separate screen and set up it on like a big screen TV in the network administrator's office, and have those screens rotating, showing multiple views, and enable the audio alarms. So when a problem occurs, so you get the sound as well.
Those have been challenging to build the screens because you kind of, the way the UI works, you gotta kind of jump back and forth or whatever. If you have the opportunity, could you show us like which tips you have for building screens?
Well, basically, yes. The screens I will also show how to create some if you like.
Okay.
But so you take some. First, what you gotta do, you go to configuration screens. You create a screen, give it a name. Say how many columns and rows will it have, and add a screen. So now here we have our test screen, and we can start adding elements on those screens. So we can add some graphs. We can select some graphs from different machines, and okay, let's say we'll have a CPU load. You give the dimensions to the graph. Yes. And click add. And here you have already one element on the screen. Now let's add some more. And here you select what it will be. Would it be some log, some history? Would it be a map? If you have created the map, you select that one. Yes, there is a very, very simple map, but please use your imagination, and there will be your very complex map displayed as well. So that's basically how it is. So you can add a clock.
Can screens in one later version be part of a template? Make them usable?
Screens can be, so now, screen is updated, and they actually appear here in the monitoring screen, so you simply select them. But you can also create such screens on templates as well. So here's our screen. And if you create multiple screens, you can combine them into slideshows and make them rotate after an interval.
Can you clone the screen? Like if you didn't work somewhere, you can clone it and start from that work?
No, I'm afraid that's not possible. But we can also later check on the options.
Sure.
Whenever you're building graphs like that, can you build graphs like where you aggregate the data on like a cluster of some sort or something, rather than like one machine here?
Yes, you can aggregate a cluster.
So I only have like one graph that shows load for like 10 machines. When you're doing, I didn't really see anything there to aggregate it out or something.
Yes, you can aggregate that as well. That's why Zabbix has those aggregated items, and you can also display all kind of items that can be numeric items that can be called into Zabbix, can be displayed on the screens. So that's possible.
Can you build a screen where you have some kind of drop down where you maybe select a different post or whatever?
yes, you can. So. Let me see. So, and here is a screen where you can select your hosts. And here was that was Zabbix server. Now it's a demo PC, and it can be, well, yeah.
That's what we get some previews. Okay, that's not.
Yeah, so one screen, so you can simply select multiple hosts, and it will display data for multiple hosts. So, when you create screens, you just simply tell that it's a dynamic item, which then means you have this those drop downs to select the hosts, and the item changes.
Can you specify host groups to apply that filter to?
Yes. You can. On those screens, you have this host group filter as well, so you can select the. But no, if you mean like display some total statistics of a host group, then you would have to create a customized graph, because in this here, if you select monitoring screens, you have to select the host.
So if you had, I'm trying to think through this, so say if you had a screen where it had like, this out here, like triggered or alarming at that point in time or something like that, can that be a dynamic item where then you can filter your group to be different host groups to view the alarms in the host group? Or do you across all of these understanding dynamics?
So when a problem occurs, then it jumps to
So I guess what I'm trying to ask you guys, are graphs going to be dynamic items? Or can the other widgets have be dynamic as well?
well, you yeah. Now, many things can be dynamic, even including you can have your host group listed. You can have like your business processes listed there, like the business services, if they are running or not, or if they some stocks going up or down. They can be also displayed on maps using some arrows, and so you can create it very customized. So yes, that would be about the visualization and the screens and screenshots as slideshows. Now, as for the configuration part itself, you may be interested in so how to add a host in Zabbix. So this is also a very simple process if you doing your first steps in Zabbix. So you simply add a host, give the host a name, assign a group in which group the host is, give it an IP address or DNS name that resolves, assign a template. Let's say you will be using like Windows template, and that's basically it. You're ready to add a host, and if the agent is installed on that machine, it gets monitored instantly. So there you see you have your items already available on that machine from the Windows template, and they can be monitored. How to create another item? That's also very simple. So you just create item, press the button there, give the item a name, and then you can choose what type of the item it would be, what metrics are you interested in. So that's the important part, is the item key, which actually tells Zabbix what data should be gathered. So here you can see a list of available keys and the descriptions. And you can also always use the Zabbix documentation, which is available on our website. And in any case, if you have some questions or how to use the item key, which is the correct key, or what parameters should be specified, so here you can see all those topics covered here, or also in the documentation part. So very, very valuable information there. And yes, then we specify the type of information, if it's a numeric or text or log file, how often should it be updated. You can use flexible intervals also if you want some items to be gathered at different intervals at different times. So let's say in the working hours you want some metrics to be followed more often, and then on the weekends not that often. So you can also specify that using the flexible intervals. You can store the values as they are or as deltas for, let's say, network speeds, and then you can filter out all your items using a concept called applications. So you can, this is basically grouping of items. If it would be some CPU metrics, you can use some CPU application, and then it will be easier to filter out on the later data. And that's basically it. So you will be able to create an item that way. So that's for the configuration part. Now, let's return to the presentation and also cover some more of the functionality that you can do with Zabbix. Discovery. That is a great feature on larger and smaller networks. So Zabbix can discover all your network devices. So you basically specify the IP range of a subnet, and then Zabbix runs the discovery and sees all the devices on that subnet. And depending on the returned information, Zabbix can check whether there is Zabbix agent installed on those machines. If there is, it can check some returned values, and depending on the returned value, Zabbix can automatically add this host to monitoring and assign a correct template to that. So if the return value is like a Linux, then it automatically adds a Linux template to that machine. Zabbix also has a low-level discovery, as I already told about disk drives, network interfaces. So whenever you can add a disk drive or network interface, it gets added also in Zabbix, and all the metrics like for disk drives, the total volume and the used space or free space also gets monitored automatically. Zabbix can also monitor your website. So it's important to see whether the website is up or down, and it can monitor very basic things. So like from whether the website is responding or what are the download times and speeds. But you can also create very complex web scenarios in Zabbix and ask Zabbix to actually log into your website using some credentials, check for a predefined word or number that exists only after you have logged in to verify if the login actually really works. And then Zabbix can also then log out of the session that you don't have unnecessarily opened sessions on your web server. So that's another great feature. Then you can display all this data in graphs, how the website performed, and what are the download times. You can also filter the response codes if the response code matches some required values. and of course create triggers when there are problems on those websites. Now, when we have all the data, there will be lots of the data, actually. Gigabytes, even terabytes. So that's pretty much a lot, and well, normally all those values that are gathered by Zabbix are saved in history tables. And this means every single value of each item update is stored there. But normally it's not really useful to store those actual values for a long time. You can normally store them for a week or a month, let's say so. But then Zabbix has a built-in data reduction mechanism called the housekeeper, which what it does, it cleans up your database from all the data, and it turns your historical values into trends, which are the average historical values for each hour. So you get your disk space saved a lot using the housekeeper. But you can also use partitioning of your tables if you have a real large environment, and then manage the partitions and simply remove all those partitions depending on your requirements. Now, the architecture part, how that can actually be installed and achieved. So this is how it actually looks like, what's the components of a Zabbix instance. So Zabbix consists of a back-end application which is running on a Unix operating system. We usually on a Red Hat or Ubuntu, but other operating systems are supported as well. Application itself is written in C, so it's very efficient, and the server part then does all the polling and all the trigger evaluation, and then all the data is stored in a database, which then connects to a front end, which actually the end users can use and see all those data, and actually what we also did, that's done on the front end part. So for the front end we use PHP, and it can run on any web server on any browser. Then you can also use Zabbix API to actually do API calls and do some automation and add hosts using API, or do other tasks using that. You can also use API to connect Zabbix to other applications or ticketing systems and send data back and forth to them as well. So these are the basic concepts of the system itself. I told you already about the agent, so this is a small native application that helps to gather data from your monitored devices, and yes, it has a small footprint, does not take a lot of resources, and can be easily installed and also automatically managed via Chef, for example, and deployed very easily on a large amount of systems. Various modes of Zabbix agent are available, so it's active and passive mode for Zabbix agents. And how do they differ? There are some differences in them. So for the passive mode, Zabbix server does actually all the job. It requests the agent to return some data, and then the agent gets the request and then responds to the server. If you use agent in active mode, then the agent is the one which connects to Zabbix server, requests a list of checks, and then returns all the requested information to Zabbix server. If you use agents in active mode, the agents actually can buffer data. So if a connection is lost between agent and server, so the agent can buffer a limited amount of data. It can be even up to 65,000 values. So whenever the connection restores, the data is then sent back to the server. So it's a performance gain as well. And you can put those agents either into your local network, or they can be configured also to be located into, for example, DMZ zones as well. Now, for the maintenance part, all the configuration of Zabbix is stored in Zabbix database. So all you gotta do is take care of the database itself and a few configuration files of the server which are required to start the server itself. We do have various versions of Zabbix instances, but here we do not do any database changes when you do upgrade minor versions. So if you're running 2.2.4, you can upgrade to 2.2.7 and no changes to database will be made. However, if you will upgrade to a major version like 2.4, so Zabbix will automatically perform a database upgrade as well, since the database even changes a little bit. As for the agents, they are compatible with all versions of Zabbix server. So it's when you upgrade your Zabbix server, for example, you do not have to upgrade also the agents all at once. So they can be compatible. You can use an older agent with a newer server without any issues. Now, how can you install Zabbix actually? So, Zabbix can be running on a single box, on a single machine, with all those components like the backend, front end, and database located on one instance. It can run even on a virtual machine and also on such a tiny thing as a laptop or demo instance. It's all supported. But if you have a bigger enterprise environment, you should consider separating all those components into separate boxes, so that you have one Zabbix backend server, one database, and one front-end server. If you have multiple users, then they create a significant load on the web server, so you might want to separate that as well. You can create various high availability solutions on all those parts. You can create HA on Zabbix servers, so that they, in case of if one server goes down and switches over to another, we do not restrict you in the choice of the HA solutions, so you're free to choose whichever you're familiar with and which fits your environment. The same goes for database. You can use whichever replication you would like to use on the database part as well. If you have a big environment, so that means lots of devices scattered around different places, and normally you install Zabbix in your headquarters or in your main data center, and Zabbix can monitor very easily the devices on that one network. But if you have another location, you would like to monitor those devices as well. So what you would do, you would create a port forwarding rule for each device to connect via firewall, and then report the data to Zabbix. But Zabbix has another great concept called the proxies. And a proxy is a smaller type of Zabbix server which can be installed on remote locations, and then proxy gathers all the data from the remote hosts and sends it back to Zabbix server with one connection. And if the connection for some reason drops between Zabbix server and proxy, that's another problem because proxy can buffer the data, and when the connection restores, and sends all the data back to Zabbix server. So no data loss in case of simple network errors. Also, various modes for proxies available, both active and passive. So you can use the proxies either to distribute the load. So if your server is running on high load, you can add some more proxies so that they take care of the item polling, and then the server actually does only the data storage and trigger evaluation and sending out notifications. You can also use web monitoring via proxies as well. So many options. Yes, please.
Do you know how many Zabbix proxies we have per server?
Well, that is a good question. So normally you can have, well, the enterprise environments, in those environments, the amount of proxies can vary from, let's say, 5 till 20 till even more. So you can have many proxies. And as an example, we do have one working installation with, now wait for it, 3,000 proxies running simultaneously spread across the country. And not necessarily, those proxies not necessarily monitor a huge amount of devices. Many of them run on, I think, embedded hardware and monitor some, like, few workstations or network equipment. But anyways, I think with a few thousands of proxies would be enough to fit any environment. So yes, you are not limited to that.
Can you show this? Can you do an example of this where you're web monitoring from multiple locations? How you set that up in the web monitoring? Because proxies are assigned per host, right? In the normal scheme. So this is a different model, right?
Well, basically, when you create a web scenario, now, okay, let's do an example. So. So here you can create those web scenarios. Of here you can also add the applications and which browser you would like to use for those checks. That's the symbol with which browser footprint will be used, and then you configure actual web scenario steps which will be used for these checks. You specify the URL of your website, pass some variables if required, required strings, status codes, etc. Add that, and if then the host is monitored via proxy, then the proxy actually does the web check, and so you get that concept. As you see here, if the host is monitored by Zabbix server, then the server does checks, but it can be also, if you create a web scenario on a host that's monitored by proxy, then the proxy does it. So you can check that.
I think the key being in this picture, can you set up the agent to have two different proxies pick up its information? No.
Technically, you can.
Because it's with one of them being in London, one of them being in Paris, would you maybe be checking like latency potentially? Isn't one of the web scenarios like performance?
You probably could use the web scenarios for latency, but if you're really interested in latency, there probably would be some other metrics that could be used to calculate that. But yes, why not web scenarios?
So what's involved in actually setting up a Zabbix proxy? Do you program the proxy on Zabbix server saying that proxy A will do these checks and then it will report in rather than configuration and then start applying it? Or do you actually have to like log in to the proxy to let it do, or how does that work?
Yeah, so that works actually pretty simple. First of all, you have to install the proxy application on a remote box. And when you have done so, then you go to administration, proxies, create a proxy, give it a nice name, and just click add. And then, as for the hosts part, you create a host and tell that it will be monitored by proxy. Yeah. You update the host, and then in the proxies part, you see here our recently added host is now monitored by proxy. As simple as it is.
So if you want to change though which proxy a host to be monitored by, so I can look at that, but you also have to go update the config file on the agent to tell what proxy you want to do.
Yes. Well, that is the important part, because in the Zabbix agent you specify the server ground, server active ground, the config file, and there they should point to either the server or the proxy. You can actually combine and use both or multiple, right? And it is not a big problem. If you plan to switch actually and to jump from proxy to server, and if you want your agents to be ready for that, then you just have them both listed in this server field.
So an agent you can basically configure and config to point to as many proxies, and then whatever you set up in the admin console, you can select which one actually gets used.
Yes, but only then in such case only one proxy will be used, and if you will be using active checks, then on the agent log you will be seeing messages like no configuration received from a proxy because that host does not exist on the proxy which is not monitored. That's what you'll be getting, but yes, theoretically it's possible.
So when you're using proxies, like for example, you mentioned the one case where they had like up to 3,000 proxies. I assume that those are like small branch offices type deal. Do you, whenever you actually have a proxy check back, can that be done over the WAN, or does that have to be something like a VPN connection so it's all internal? Like how does a proxy connect to the server?
Up to you.
Okay.
Up to you.
So if you do it publicly, then do you issue out like a public key or something for security reasons? Or how does that work to make sure only vetted proxies can hop onto your stuff?
You specify which proxy then actually connects, and in the server field that you connect only to one server, and then the server only knows its own proxies. If you're worried about the security, then you can use a tunneling of your choice and encrypt your traffic, and then use such mechanisms. But also, if you're not worried about if someone steals your CPU usage data, then you can simply assign a DNS name and ask it to connect, and that's it.
The communication between the proxy and the server, is that over a single port? I mean, if so, is that customizable?
Yes, it is, and it can be customized. But we do have our already registered ports, which are used for Zabbix traffic, and no other applications should be using that. But if you're not okay with the defaults, you can select your own. So, any other questions maybe, or what else would you like to see? Which parts you would like to talk about more in the front end, or what would you like that I show more some sections of the interface? So since we do have time, so we can do some.
Can you have people in shifts to receive alerts? So like someone's every Monday they get the alerts, someone else on Wednesdays.
Yes, you can work out such a thing as well. So as for the users part, you can create multiple users which has access to different sections, and so here you can configure the permissions of your users, and so you can say that the user will be only seeing some Linux servers and has only read-only access to them. So you can configure all those parts here for the users, and then they will only see the host groups they are actually allowed to see. You can also use Active Directory authentication or HTTP authentication for Zabbix. That's also possible. And yeah, here in the users part, for each user you can let's select a user. So here you can select the language for the user, the theme, some basic settings like refresh rates, rows per page, and the groups the user is in. Then you can add the user media and tell like there is an email address when it's active, so it will only send notifications at predefined times. Whether you want to receive notifications about a specific trigger severity, that if you don't know what to receive information and warnings, so just deselect them, and that's it. You will not get them.
So you're doing this under the administration, which you have to have Zabbix super admin for. Is there a way, like I'm a user who doesn't have super admin, can I manage my own media? Yes.
You see this tab here? This is what I was talking about, the audio alarms. So if you have a problem and if a trigger fires, and then on the dashboard it goes into problem state, so you can have an actual message displayed here on the pop-up on the screen, plus enable the sounds for the systems. So yes, whenever a new problem appears, you get yes.
What does it sound like when they're all firing?
Oh,
It sounds like our SMS.
yeah, something like that.
Very okay.
Probably will work. That's just a test item. But yes, that's where you can in the user part you can configure that and enable the audios.
Recalculate.
Oh, you see? There's the message. There was a sound. There's a problem. Log file test error. So that's how it happens. Every time. So, yeah. So, another great functionality which you can use every day.
So with Zabbix being open source, where's like a good place to find like open source templates and things like those onto like repository, good place to follow, find useful templates.
So, very good question. You can find templates here on Zabbix.org. Various actually useful resources how to do stuff in the Zabbix can be found here. And here is a section of Zabbix templates. And you may look for yourself, then later on you see there are predefined templates for various devices, servers, hardware, what's that, printers, cooling applications, so there's templates for Exchange servers, Citrix. Yeah, this is one of the resources where to look. Then you can always do a brief search in your favorite search engine for Zabbix, whatever template, and you can find probably lots of useful stuff there as well. So people do share the templates. You can ask for specific templates also in the Zabbix forum or IRC channel. Probably someone has anything that is willing to share. So these would be the resources where you can look for some interesting templates.
I mean, these end up just kind of being XML documents, right?
Yeah.
They change over time. It'd be nice to see these like in like a source control, like SVN or Git someday. I've always thought, because that way because like the older versions, I suppose you can go through the wiki history and find this.
Well, what you see here are the mostly updated versions, but that's a good idea about the SVN. We probably should consider that as an option. But no, for today, it is what you see here.
Can you send in values for the keys on the items, like through the API, without using an agent?
You can, for some of them. There is a concept called Zabbix Sender, and Zabbix Sender is basically a small application that, when executed, you can specify which is the server, which is the host, what is the item you actually want to send the value to, and the actual value. And then you configure a tracker item in the Zabbix front end, which then receives this actual value. So you can configure a script that whenever an event occurs, launches Zabbix Sender with appropriate parameters and sends in a value.
I was looking at the Zabbix Sender, but I wanted to send in more than one value.
You can send those values from a file. For Zabbix Sender, there is an option to store values in a file, space delimited, host name, item name, and value. And then with the sender, you just specify sender and pass to the file.
So that's good for bulk loading, but if I wanted to have something monitoring and send in multiple, I guess I just have to send each one in to the sender one at a time.
You can actually open, there's this on their documentation, you can actually open up a socket and then basically feed it through a single connection. Actually, if you go look at their documentation on the Zabbix chapter, they actually consider modules here to send items.
Okay.
So is that how you do custom checks? Or is there a better solution than that?
Well, it depends. Well, you can, of course, you can do